All right, so that is a great reminder because today we have the Treehouse here to present to us. And today I'm hosting Jeanette Williams. She is a licensed clinical social worker that's been working in the field of child abuse for over 15 years. Upon receiving her master's degree in social work from the University of South Carolina, Jeanette moved to Winder and began providing therapy to abused children and their families at Treehouse. After providing therapy to over 100 families, Jeanette was trained in forensic interviewing and has interviewed over 1,300 children who were alleged victims of sexual abuse, physical abuse, or witness to a crime. Jeanette continued to work in the child abuse field while relocating to Augusta to work for a child advocacy center as a program director. After 7 years with Child Enrichment, Inc. in Augusta, she was called to come back to Winder in 2015 and become the executive director of the Treehouse, Inc. Oh, Jeanette has devoted her professional life to helping children and families heal from child abuse and now running one of the best nonprofits around. When she isn't trying to rid the world of child abuse or write grants, she enjoys spending time with her teen daughters and cat, Roxanne, walking at Fort Yargo, and of course, been watching whatever new show is on Netflix. I've known Jeanette for several years, didn't realize we since 2015, and I served on the Treehouse auction committee for the past couple of years, and after she finishes speaking, I have my raffle tickets for this year that I would love to finish selling here at Rotary. You can Venmo me $10. I'll tell you all about them, but I'm going to now turn it over to Jeanette so she can give us an update. Thanks.
Annual report. I have some information on here for you that you might find helpful. I promise I will not tell sad stories or, bring everybody down about child abuse.
Hey, let's.
I can be a buzz pillar when it comes to that at social events sometimes. But today we're going to focus on prevention, and of course we've all had that word shoved down our throat for the past year in a different manner. It's about health prevention, but child abuse prevention matters too. And just like it was said, today marks the first day of Child Abuse Prevention Month. So we have some activities that are going to be coming up in the community over this next month. But I just wanted to talk a little bit more today, not so much about what we do at the Treehouse, because you're probably a little familiar with us. I mean, we've been around now for 25 years with our interventions, but how we're kind of moving forward with prevention in the next few years. Okay, so just first off, here's our mission. The mission has pretty much stayed the same for many, many years. When we first started off, we only served Barrow County, and then we were able to expand to Jackson and Banks counties. So just a brief overview of what a child advocacy center is. The first one is established in 1986 in Huntsville, Alabama, and it was established by a district attorney. And the reason why this model even came about was that the district attorney was trying some sexual abuse cases. And what they were finding is by the time it went to court, which could be 2 years to 4 years from the time of the incident, the child would come and tell their story over and over so many times that they started recanting. They're just like, I don't want to talk about it anymore, because it was more traumatic to them to keep telling all these people what happened rather than, seek the justice, that they deserved. So the community came together in Huntsville and they developed this model. And you can see here, it's just like without the model, we had the family here, child disclosure. They're having to tell all these different people, they're having to tell their principal, their teacher, DFAC, law enforcement, the prosecutor, mental health, the medical people. And by the time it's like average 7 to 12 times, they're having to tell their story within like a week, for the process to start. So the model then developed into this, where all of these agencies come together and surround that family and that child. And the traditional model of a child advocacy center, like what we do at the Treehouse, is where we will forensically interview that child. Law enforcement and DFAC come to that interview, but they never interact with that child. So we interview them. They're in another room watching that interview through a closed circuit television. It's recorded. We can use that later on for court purposes. But really, we just want to make it as child friendly and family friendly as we can for those victims. And so ultimately, again, reducing trauma is our goal. We don't want to further traumatize children when they've already gone through trauma, that they couldn't help. So. Yeah. Okay. So currently we have 52 child advocacy centers in the state of Georgia. When I first started about 15 years ago, there was maybe 20, if that. So that's how much we've grown in just 15 years. We are one of the leading states as far as when it comes to our coalition of child abuse centers. The only one that has more than us and is more well connected is Texas. So we're very proud to be part of Child Advocacy Centers of Georgia. Every county is served now by a Child Advocacy Center. And, you know, we serve primarily Barrow, Macon, Jackson because we fall under the Piedmont Judicial Circuit. So most centers are attached to a judicial circuit. But as you can see here in 2019, all of our centers combined provided more than 200,000 services to children. So here's just a brief overview of what our services are. Like I said, the clinical services and the forensic services are traditional Child Advocacy Center services. So we're unique. I mean, and this is something I don't think a lot of people in our community know, is that we expanded beyond that years ago. So in 2005, we started offering family services, supervised visitation, and home parenting. That is not a requirement to be a Child Advocacy Center. It doesn't even fit in the standards. So that's just an extra that we get to provide to our community. So like, we're really proud of that. And that's kind of like what my mission is now, or my goal over the next couple of years is really building that up, because what I've learned is prevention matters. But as you can see, here's our other services. We do offer on-site therapy. Not every center does that. We do have to have our standards, at least a contact, a therapist in the community that we can refer to, but we have therapists on site, including a Spanish-speaking one. So a lot of times people are asking me, it says up here, lessons learned from COVID-19. You know, everyone's asking, like, how did it affect you? So the first lesson I'd say that we learn is that I work with real life superheroes. And so these are really the faces of the Treehouse. There's 12 of us now, and they're the ones who work day in and day out with our clients that come through our doors. They make the relationships, they follow up with families. Many of them have been here for a very long time. Ida down there in the bottom corner has been here for 20 years. You know, she's our pretty much almost from the beginning. So I'm very proud to work with these people. And of course, this doesn't even count our law enforcement and DFAC that we work with every day. Other lessons learned. So one, abuse does not stop just because there's a pandemic. We were very concerned, you know, in the child abuse field, like, what does this mean? How are we going to meet these needs? And we were very fortunate. We never stopped providing services. Again, those people I just showed you, they, there was no just working from home completely. If there was a need, we came in, we continued doing our interviews and our therapy. What we did find is we did have a decrease in the amount of cases we had last year, but the severity was worse, you know, and so like, that's something too. It was taking longer for those children to either get comfortable and tell, or like there were physical, you know, bruising, damage to the body where the family had no choice but to seek medical help. So that's kind of what we were dealing with last year. We learned that teletherapy and virtual visitations are a game changer. Telemental health, just like telemedicine, has been around for a long time, and we never got on the bandwagon until we had to. And now I'm like, why did we not think of this earlier? But we had 2 weeks about to get all of our therapists and our interns trained in teletherapy. So ethically, we had to go through trainings ourselves, did it all online. We had, you know, we were buying printers and just, you know, headphones and everything that we could, so our therapists could still do therapy from home. And we made sure our clients had what they needed in their home to also do the therapy. It's not ideal because we like for kids to come to our center and actually do some play therapy and everything, but they've done great. I mean, I think with kids being so familiar already with virtual school and like doing everything online, it's been a game changer, and we are not going to get rid of it. We will definitely continue it for those families who transportation is an issue, employment's an issue, parents can't get off work, whatever. I think it's going to really remove some barriers. Also learned that teachers and school personnel really are the front line in disclosures. So again, when we removed school for a while, you know, our teachers weren't seeing the kids, our school counselors weren't seeing them on a regular basis at first. And that's why there was a lull, you know, like who was going to call DSAT, who was going to call law enforcement. But I will say I'm very proud of our school system and how our social workers and our counselors, they really stepped up. They were identifying those high-risk families and making sure to make contact with them. So they're very important to our process. Finally, our community came through and meeting the needs of Treehouse in 2020, and not just our needs. I know, like, really, I'm just really proud of our community because all of the nonprofits that I work closely with, you know, we survived and we were worried. So we're still going. And many of you, you know, have businesses, or you actually attended our virtual Night of Hope. Thank you. We were able to raise $90,000. It was a God thing. I don't even know. You know, our auction was set to be in March. And so like 2 weeks prior to it, we had to cancel it, and we didn't know if we were gonna, you know, have one at all, but we pivoted, had a virtual one, and it was amazing. And then what we learned, of course, is prevention. If this happens again, there's a pandemic, if kids can't go to school, what do we do? And, you know, for me, I've had a lot of time to think about this, is we've got to start now in the home with the families, teaching kids coping and skills to, like, talk about talk about their bodies, teaching parents how to appropriately discipline so that hopefully someday we can get rid of child abuse. So one of the steps of prevention is understanding who's at risk. And the top one up here says teen parents, just so you know.
Sorry.
I've done this presentation for many years now, and I tell you, looking at it though, this past time, like, really stuck out to me, because I think I realized, like, oh my gosh, my family has these risk factors. We did this past year for sure. You know, it comes to social isolation. Who wasn't experiencing isolation, you know? Mental health problems. There's been an increase in anxiety and depression. You know, a lot of us struggle with that. Economic crisis. Did we experience that this year? Absolutely. And so I think it kind of takes it from the abstract of, like, yes, there's those families, right? There's those families who need help, to, like, no, like, so many might need help, including my own. And so, like, this is something that's very important to realize, that it's not just someone else's family or problem. You know, like, we need to start in our home too.
Is this like pick any three, or is, like, if you can have one that's severe, or is it?
I mean, it just could be like one of them. I mean, all of these are risk factors, you know. And so what we try to do with our parenting and our prevention process is to, like, pinpoint some of this, you know. And so if we know alcohol abuse is a problem, or substance abuse, we want to make sure that family has resources and get connected, you know. Unrealistic expectations is another one. Very easy. Like, I expect my teenager to act a certain way. Well, that might not be realistic, and so then I overreact when I get mad at them, you know. So something very simple like that could be a risk factor.
Like, I don't know if anybody journals or whatnot, but, like, I was able to look back at this past week, a year ago, we had miserable weather, and, like, I was in a dark place where I can see several of these things like pop up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And so I think that this year and beyond, like, we're still going to be seeing ramifications of what we just experienced. You know, even the unstable relationships, you know, like, it's been said, like, either at the end of quarantine, you're having a divorce or babies, you know, but like, so, you know, like, it's reality, and just something to be aware of. So the good news, though, is that there is prevention, and there are protective factors out there that we can have as families to lay the groundwork for our children, even when they have families someday. So here's some of the protective factors. Of course, social connections. We've had to be really creative over the past year, right, about how we feel isolated, but I really want to see my friends, so let's have a Zoom call. You know, I'll be fine if I never have to Zoom again, but it really has helped with our social connections, right? Concrete support when needed. This is, like, one of my favorite, because we're very good at saying, if you need anything, let me know, you know, or I'm here, just try to call away. That doesn't help families when they're, like, in the midst of crisis, right? And so, like, that's why we started offering transportation, because we knew that was support that families needed. Like, yes, that child needs to come to therapy. I can't get them to therapy. What do we do? You know, so we have to look for resources with that. Even when it comes down to paying utilities. And I'll say one positive thing that has also come out for COVID It's like there's been COVID money that's been passed down to our funders to help families with that. So now it's so wonderful that if I have a family come to me and they're like, I can't pay, you know, our electricity bill, I'm really stressed out. We can actually give them money now to do that. Just like there's churches here that help. So that's been a positive. It's not going to last forever in my world, in my funding world, but I'm glad that we can now offer that concrete support. Of course, like I said, emotional and social development, that's where the expectations come in, and knowledge of parenting and child development. So how are we helping? How are we moving toward this prevention attitude, I guess? We realize that we need to help the family, not just the child. So again, when we first started child advocacy centers, it was all about that child victim, right? But if your child has been sexually or physically abused, do you think that's going to affect you as a parent or as a sibling or as a grandparent? Absolutely, right? And so we now have a victim advocate, a family advocate is what we call her, completely surround that family. And it's not just, yes, the sexual abuse or physical abuse happened, but what do you need? You know, you need clothes, you need a jacket, you need help with utilities. That's how we're looking at it now. The Nurturing Parenting Program is our in-home parenting program that we offer. It's a model, it's evidence-based, and it goes through all of those things that we just kind of talked about. We lay the foundation for those protective factors. It's very intense. It's a 12-week program in the home. I only have one person who does this for 3 counties. And the reason why is just funding. We got one grant that covers that. And it's very intense. Like I said, like she can be in there 1 hour a week, 3 hours a week. Just depends on what that family's going through. When she goes out, we also work with life skills. And that's something as simple as like defects is involved because the house is a mess. That's one of the problems. So their case plan says they need to have a clean house. Well, you know, the parents may not know how to appropriately clean. They grew up like that, right? So it's not unclean to them. So like she'll go in and help them. Like, here's what's expected. Here's how to do this. Here's what you need. She takes them to the grocery store. Like shows them how to pick out healthy foods within a budget, things like that. If they need to open a banking account, she'll take them to the bank. So just very simple life skills that you don't associate with child abuse, but the point is that we're trying to lay that foundation so that there's no abuse that happens. And of course, judgment-free. Like again, I definitely see this now. We all have at least one of those risk factors, right? So we want those families to come in. I mean, this is crisis time. Some of our families, their child has been removed, placed in foster care. They're getting to see their family or their child at our center. We don't judge them for that, you know, like they fell in hard times. A lot of it's substance abuse, homelessness, unemployment. And so like, we don't care. Just come and like see your kid and let's maintain that bond. And then we're going to help that parent get to where they need to be so that child can go home. And then therapeutic services. Of course, we offer therapy to the children when they have experienced that trauma. We take that a step further and also offer it to non-offending caregivers if needed, siblings, because again, it doesn't just affect that child who is abused. And I'm hoping to expand that a little bit more. So moving forward, my wish list. Of course, I would love to hire additional parent educators. Again, like we've got 3 counties, you know, we served 777 families last year. The need is much greater than that, but how do we get people into the home? Or even like educating the community, like churches and everything. Here's how you can help these families to hopefully reduce the risk of child abuse. I want to offer AFCBT in addition to TSCBT. I know that means nothing to you, but TSCBT is trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. That's the therapeutic model that we use with our children who come in. We want to offer alternative for families CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. This is where we actually go in the home, or they can come to us and we work with the family unit. They're in crisis. Let's say it's just high, it may not even be abuse, but again, dad's an alcoholic. Both parents lost their job due to COVID issues or whatever. That's high conflict possibility. One of the children's on the spectrum, the other one's a teenager, you know, whatever. Like we want to get that family in there and again, help surround them, give them the therapy they need to heal. And then of course, we want to increase our referral sources. So what I mean by that is we're very, the grant that we have for our parenting is very specific. We can only receive therapy, parenting referrals from DFACS if there's been a DFACS case or an open DFACS case at any point. Well, we've got a lot of families out there who the school identifies as like, DFACS isn't there yet, but they're gonna be if we don't, get them some help. Our hands are tied right now, so we're continuing to look for new referral sources. I'm working with the drug court right now. They're going to try to write grants, and so that we can hire an additional parent educator to help them out. But yeah, I mean, that's just where we're going, is we've got to start, and I hope our funders realize interventions are needed, absolutely, but the prevention is really just as important. And so I'm hoping this is a discussion that as a state and a nation that we continue to have to help out. All right, so just a couple more housekeeping things. Save the date. We are going to go forward with an in-person auction this year. May 21st is when it's set. And if you have not been to our Night of Hope for Children, it's going to be the 23rd one. So it's well-oiled machine. I have nothing to do with it really. I've got a group of ladies who handle it all, and I just sit there and show up when I need to. But you can purchase your tickets at thetreehouseinc.org. And we have a live and silent auction. We've got a really fun auctioneer, buffet. Well, it might not be buffet this year, but food is included. There's a bar. It's just a good time. So please come to that if you can. You can also find out about sponsorship opportunities. If you sponsor, of course, you'll get tickets to the event and everything like that. And then, like Stephanie said, we're doing a raffle. And so she's got some tickets over here, $10. You get 3 chances to win. Grand prize is $1,000. Second one is we did get our hands on a PlayStation 5, thanks to Jackson EMC. And then we've got a Yeti cooler here as well, thanks to Aikens. So please help support us. This is a big fundraiser. It's the only fundraiser that we have. Someday we're gonna have to expand that, obviously, but right now it's something that keeps us going. So. All right.
Ben wants that PlayStation 5. He's gonna be the first one to buy it.
I'll tell you what, even if you don't want a PlayStation 5, if you get it, you can sell it for $600.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's a $400.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's only $10.
Oh, I'm in.
Oh, it's affordable.
Oh, I'm in.
No, trailer.
$590.
Oh, that's,
Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
So.
Math is not my thing. Somebody online's laughing at me more than they should. Hey, what questions do we have for Jeanette?
So your staff of 12, all full-time or some part-timers?
We've got one part-time person who works on the weekends, and she does our fee-for-service supervised visitation. That's the only service that we charge for. And that is because they come from the court. So it might be a superior court, parents getting divorced. They're high, usually domestic violence and stuff like that. There's no grant that covers this. So they pay $50 to come to have their visit supervised, and that's on weekends.
Okay, and then volunteer opportunities, if any, with the organization?
Yeah, so we've kind of had to put a halt to some of that this past year, but we are in desperate need of supervised visitation observers. So and what that means is like when the kids are coming to our center during the week to visit with their parents because they're in foster care, we have someone in the room with them at all times, really just kind of hanging out and observing. And so I've got 2 staff who do that only, but that's a very large service for us. So we try to rely on interns and volunteers to help us out with that. And then of course, anything like from landscaping, so I'm really cheap. Like, come to Treehouse, might look a little unkept or whatever, but like we rely on volunteers to do things like that. Okay, Josh.
I don't have a question, but just more of a comment. I've seen firsthand what the Treehouse has done to our kids, worked with our kids in bear defects. I've worked with the department for over 20 years now. Before I moved to another region, I worked very closely with the Treehouse, and I've seen firsthand the amount of impact that this agency has on our kids that are struggling. And they've done a wonderful job when it comes to interviewing our kids. A lot of times when we first get involved, we don't want to actually interview them for specific situations because we want the Treehouse to be the one who's interviewing our children so that they only get interviewed once on specific allegations. And they do an absolutely amazing job. So if you ever have an opportunity to volunteer or support them monetarily, your money and your time will be well spent. It's an amazing organization.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Have you all ever had a situation where y'all would vote or didn't allow visitation?
Only So yeah, so visitation, parents have to follow rules, right? That's part of it. So there have been times when we've had to revoke if a parent continued to break a rule. And that could be something like they're talking about, when you come home, I'm gonna take you to California, or, you know, to Disney World, or, you know, California, or whatever. It's getting that child coached up, but we don't allow that because reality is we don't know if that child's gonna go home. Things like that, or if they bring a cell phone and continue to take pictures and things of that nature. It's very rare because parents want to see their kids, right? You know, but yeah, it could happen. Or like our weekend ones, if it's something where we don't have security, you know, on site. So if we feel like it's going to be too volatile, we will not take them.
And then my last question, you mentioned about, I guess, teaching them about, you know, certain life skills and everything. Have you all ever considered partnering with certain businesses, like for instance, you know, to host like a financial literacy class or
Yeah.
something like that?
So we've tried that in the past a couple of times. We have low turnout from our families, and that's the problem. But what I'm hoping to, especially if we get that drug court grant, we're gonna offer groups that they have to come to. They have to go for it. They have to come to these groups. And that is where, yes, like I will be reaching out, like, you know, like come to our group. We know they're gonna be there. And this is how, you know, certain businesses can help us with that. Cause we're not the experts on that, you know? But
Yeah,
yeah.
the reason why I asked that, because, you know, with me being in banking, a lot of times you can tell that there's something going on with the person. And then on top of the maybe physical and mental, then they're also being taken advantage of, you know, financially.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
trying to talk with them and teach them about certain things and everything is, you know, is what we like to do.
Yeah. So that's something we definitely move towards for sure.
Any other questions? All right. So each week, I have this written down so I don't forget. Each week we donate a book to the Winder Public Library on behalf of our speaker. Today we have Tiny T-Rex in the Very Dark. So, we'll get your picture afterwards. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time.